Hello, my name's Colleen Granger and this is So Little Time Quilting. Our project today are bordered placemats. They're fun, they're easy, and you can use your scraps. Well, half-yard pieces anyway. So, for each placemat, you're going to need your background piece, which is going to be the back side of your placemat as well as your frame. It needs to be 17 by 21 inches. 17 inches tall, 21 inches across. Your centerpiece is going to be 13 by 17. 13 inches high, 17 inches across. And for this particular project, the fabrics that I grabbed are both directional. So you have to pay attention if you're using directional fabric. The other thing you need is your accent strips. And you're going to need 4 accent strips that are cut 1.5 inches wide and 21 inches long. So if you just have a scrap, 4 or 5 inches, you can even cut these only 1 inch if you just want a tiny little, like a tuxedo tuck, rather than a 1/2 inch tuck. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our frame fabric and we're going to cut off the corners like this. And let's see how we're going to do that. What I'm doing is I am taking my fabric, and depending on how brave you are, depends on whether or not you want to do 2 corners at one time or bite the bullet and do all 4 corners at one time. There's only one drawback of doing all 4 corners at one time, and that is the fact that if you cut it wrong, you've cut them all wrong. So what I need is my marking pencil, and I love this. This is a Bohm, and it has white, black, which is regular pencil lead, and pink. So for today, because of the colors of the project, I'm using the white. I'm taking my square ruler and I'm aligning the 3 line and the other 3 line with the number 1 pair in my upper right hand corner. So I'm going to mark this line here, and I'm going to mark this line here, and then I'm going to take my ruler, I'm going to line this mark up with this mark, and I'm going to cut off my corners. And I think I'm going to get a bigger cutter. My 4 corners are gone, and you can set these aside for your next scrappy project. Now what we're going to do is we're going to press all of our accent strips in half. We're going to align the raw edges with the raw edge of our framework. If you choose to put pins in it, that's up to you. I'm not a big pinner, and we are going to sew with a 1/4 inch seam. And for those of you that are safety conscious, yes, I did have those in my mouth. Bad. Okay, so let's get to the sewing machine. I'm sorry, but my featherweight is just a wee bit noisy, so I'm going to keep the sewing to a minimum. I have my 1/4 inch bar right here to make my life easier. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sew these on. And I didn't measure anything. I just made sure that I've got excess hanging off of this edge. I don't sew on pins because they tend to break needles. Sorry about the noise. This is a great project. You could do one like has happy birthday fabric on it, and when you celebrate a family member's birthday, they can have that placemat that day. or the class of 2021 for graduation. I'm only going to sew 2 pieces on for right now because you don't need to watch me sew. Again, aligning the raw edges and making sure I've got part of them hanging out the edge. That's why we cut the corners first, because that way we don't have to measure. I don't back tack because I'm going to sew over those again. Okay, we're going to do that for all 4 sides, but not right at this second. I'm not anyway. So, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to press our accent strips. And you want to take your accent and you want to tuck it to the back side. I always press from the front because I don't like those little tucks that you can get from when you're pressing from the back side. And I am using a hot but dry iron. If you use steam, it's harder to get a crease out. So we're going to take and press all of these edges so that we have a nice crisp edge. And we're going to cut one more time. These I don't recommend layering together. I just line my ruler up with my straight edge and I cut off my excess. Okay, grabbing a pin, because I do use a pin for this. I had a sewing machine one time, and if there was a pin in my project, that machine would find it and eat it. So I tend to not use a whole lot of pins. Because I have a bar for my 1/4 inch seam, I pin from the inside of my fabric, and I just want to make sure that this folded edge stays nice and straight. Okay, back to the machine. You're going to see how easy this is. When I'm doing the corner seams, I don't want my threads to show. Come here, get out of the way. So I start sewing a little bit inside from the folded edges, and then I'm going to back tack. So I'm going to back tack at the beginning and the end of each of these seams. Sorry, I dropped the iron. Not a good thing to do. So I take a couple stitches forward and then I go backwards just till I'm at the edge, and then I go forwards again. We're going to trim our threads. Sorry, I took that out of the camera's view. So we have no threads hanging off the end. Remove the pin. And you want to get your corner as straight as you possibly can so that you get a nice crisp fold. You're not going to press the outside edges, just with a fingernail, and if you don't happen to have a fingernail, a little purple thing, Find those in your local quilt shops. Help spread your seams. Press your seam open. And when you get to the corner, it automatically wants to fold right in. So you just press it to the corner, let this fold open up, and then press it down. I try really hard not to press this fold because you don't want to fight with it. And the next thing you're going to do is I just take my thumb, I put it right near that point. Make sure I keep this in the camera view. I flip it over. Take my little purple thing again. Shove that in. And there we have our corner. So, some people prefer fabric placemats, and others like them padded so that they're also protecting their table. I do press the entire edges nice and crisp. Okay, once we have that all done, then we're going to have to make a decision. Are we going to leave it with just fabric, or are we going to put some padding in it? And that's a personal preference. So what I do is once I've got it all pressed all pressed, I measure my outside dimensions because everybody's seams are going to be slightly different, and I always measure it because sometimes I do something differently. So because I use directional fabric, you can see a bird's head here, but you can see 3 of them upside down here. So I'm going to use that as my right side. My inset has got scallops, and of course you can have your scallops going on up, or you can have your scallops going down. There's no right, there's no wrong, but you just take your centerpiece, laying everything nice and flat, tuck your center in. I do put a few pins in this, and then what I do is I top stitch right in this ditch. So before you do that, if you want padding, you cut it the same dimensions, you tuck it in, kind of hard to see here, I'm sorry. Tuck it in for all 4 corners. Just ease that right up to where that fold mark is. This is Pellon fusible fleece, I think is what it's called. And it's only fusible not because it has to be fusible, but it's fusible because that's what I happen to have on hand. So, like I said, this is a great project to use scraps. Okay, so now we have this all situated. We have this all laid down. There's no gaps on the outside edges. We filled up that entire space. And then we are going to put our center back in. And the reason you want to make sure that you have filled up the entire pockets of the corners is because you don't want someone, if you're going to put padding in, you don't want someone setting a wine glass or something like that down on the corner, and if you use too thick of a batting inside, it'll let the glass tip over. So once you have that all top stitched, then you're good to go. So you have your flange sticking up. If you don't like your flange sticking up, then what I do is I either use a matching thread or invisible thread, and I do a very small zigzag around the edge so it will stay flat. It means there's less ironing once you get it out of the washer and dryer. So Now that we have our project all done, you are ready to either give it away or put it on your dining room table or your kitchen table. The other thing you can do, because I gave you individual measurements as opposed to large quantities, you can make 4 of them out of a yard of fabric, or a yard of fabric of each one. Or these were not padded. Let's see if I can move this camera. Let's just move this. So because I was using scraps of fabric, I have one placemat that looks like this with a dark background, and I have another placemat that looks like this with the light background, because I only had a half a yard of each of these. No, I believe I had a fat quarter. So that's all I needed. I had a half a yard of this fabric, and I had scraps of my stripes. So be creative, have fun, and make it your own. Thank you for your time. I'm Colleen Granger with So Little Time Quilting. My mysteries are coming up soon.